Angelica Michael, December 27, 1946. Not much, although what little there is, my father was able to put into a little booklet. So he has told me about his ancestry and what he did when he was a young child. He became a teacher and superintendent of schools. He actually established a lot of public schools in the mountain provinces. As for my mom, she also went to the same Philippine normal school and was a teacher there. And she met my dad when she was working in one of the schools in his district. My mother was very big on Christmas celebrations. The start of the Christmas season, which in the Philippines is December 9, she would take me to a Catholic church so I could see the nativity scene. And then on Christmas Day, we always had Christmas dinner together with friends and family, and also, the little kids around. So it was a pleasant day for all of us. We were a middle class family. My parents were teachers, so they were always teaching, they were always in school. Um, Fortunately, in the Philippines, in the neighborhood that we were at, the people just look out for each other. So when I would come home from school, usually I just do my own thing, do my homework, and play with my playthings. Once in a while, I'd have a friend from the other houses, and we would play a little bit. Although not much really. I was more a loner, and I was very introverted. The childhood memories I have are really mostly about school. I was a sickly child, and it's fortunate that my mother sent me to take piano lessons. Because with the piano lessons, I was able to participate in activities in school. If there's a glee club, I was the one playing for them. If somebody is dancing folk dance, I would be playing for that folk dance. Um, so they were the memories that I remember the most. Our understanding of the world at the time was shaped by my parents. My father, when I was young, was actually sent to the United States for a year, so he could go to Peabody College in in Tennessee. My mother too loved to travel. She didn't have too much occasion to travel, but I remember she was able to travel once to Korea. And because of this, it opened my eyes to the larger world. But as far as my community was concerned, it also showed me how much trust I can put in the people around me, and how much well help we can give each other when one is in need. So that was a community that I learned to be in, to love, to trust, and that's what shaped my idea of the world. In the Philippines, extended family is a given. There were always people living at home who are either cousins or cousin of cousins or friends of friends. In the Philippines, also, we had a lot of maids. Um, but we had a different concept of what a maid is in my family. They may be maids, but we considered them part of our family. Because of that, we would send them to school. When they have graduated college, then they could say goodbye to us and go back to their villages and help their community. And so there was always a rollout of, different people coming in, coming out. Also, the city I lived in is the summer capital of the Philippines. So during the summer months, a lot of people would come up to our city, which is up in the mountains. It's about 5,000 feet above sea level with pine trees. And so that's where they would spend a few days or a few weeks during the summer. And because of this, it was also, I was just thinking it's probably the original Airbnb. My mom would rent the different rooms in our house, and we would be in one room downstairs and all sleeping on the floor. But we didn't mind it because it was only for a few weeks. Plus, it just gave us more bonding time with our cousins and the various people who come to our house. We were a simple family. We had a simple family life, and our values were simple: honesty and integrity. Especially my father, when he was superintendent of schools or supervisors of various schools, when he employs any of his relatives, he actually tells them to do twice the work of what another person could be, because he didn't want anybody to criticize him for nepotism. And so that's also where we learned hard work. And as far as honesty and integrity, it was a given. It was a given in my home. So if you did something wrong, you just fess up. Fortunately, my father didn't have a belt to to use on me. But I was the youngest too in the family. I had a sister who was 12 years older, and I had a brother who was 6 years older, and myself. So I was considered the youngest and the favorite. So I had some privileges. The way my parents handled difficult times and adversity. Um, Fortunately, it wasn't that often, so I didn't really see them suffer that much. As I said, we lived a simple life, so we weren't extravagant in any way. If we didn't have much money, we had simple food. If we had a little bit of money, then maybe we'd have a good spread on a Sunday. On the other hand, my parents are actually very generous. My father is known to, give loans to various friends and families, probably a little too much to my mom's discomfort, but he did it anyway. And my mom is extra generous to her relatives. So when they come to the house and they need something, my mom always had something for them, either a basket of vegetables or maybe a few pesos. So they were very generous. And that's another thing too that I learned from them, to help people in need and be generous and live within your means. My dad always sings in the morning the song, "This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." That was like his mantra in the morning. And after that, you know, his day just proceeds naturally. And the next day he sings it again. And the next day he sings it again. So for him, that's what sets him right. We go to church regularly and we're very active in church. And so a lot of our values also are church based. I'd love to sing it, but I couldn't sing anymore. My my vocal cords were affected when I had my thyroid operation. I used to sing in the choir, and I really missed that. But it is what it is. My views on relationship is to avoid drama in relationships. So we don't have drama in the house, fortunately. And in fact, even with my family now, it's like a no drama family. We have to talk about it. I mean, we've got a lot of drama in the Philippines, okay? Don't get me wrong, but as far as our family itself, we didn't have much drama. So that's a good thing. And that's a great thing, I think, that I learned just from observing my parents. I don't even think I heard them argue at all. And I see them in their afternoon walks together, just around the neighborhood. So that's what I grew up with, a family with no drama. A typical day in my home during the weekday, it is school, school, and school, schoolwork and homework. And my mom actually had to be teaching in three schools. So she was out of the house a lot. She would teach high school during the day, and there were two colleges that she would teach at in the evening and the afternoon. So she was always working. S- So that's pretty much that I was by myself most of the time, or I'll go visit families that live nearby, and chat with them if I want some company. My father was out a lot because, as I said, he was when he became superintendent of schools, he would travel a lot to the mountain provinces. And the mountain provinces really is a large area. And for a lot of those provinces, you don't even have roads to get to them. So he would be going up mountains and crossing rivers to be able to set them up. But that's what he did. 2 years, he was given a scholarship to the University of the Philippines. So he was off 2 years and went to school there. And then, as I said, 1 year when he was in the United States on a scholarship grant. So though we saw my dad almost every weekend. Weekends are Saturdays. I don't know. I guess they just differed one day to another. Maybe just playing with other kids. I don't remember the Saturdays particularly, but I know Sundays is church. So you go to church in the morning, and then in the afternoon, you'd have a lot of youth group activities. So practically the whole day is church related day in my household. Traditions around meals during the weekdays, as I said, it's very difficult because my father was out a lot and my mother is working in three schools. So we actually had very simple meals. But whoever is at the house, we all gather together for that meal together. And it didn't matter, friends are there or cousins, nephews, whoever is at home, we would just eat. And our food was simple or simply done. And I never really learned to cook. I can help go to the market and buy the food, but I never really learned to cook. No, stayed in one place. And the place is still there. I have two siblings. Um, the older one is Lilia, and she was 12 years older than me. The next one is my brother, and he is the junior, Damaso Junior, and me. So there's 6 years between us. I don't know if my parents did that, but but because of these different years apart, we were into different things. My older sister My sister became a teacher. She was actually very artistic and very and pretty. She would join these beauty pageants. Of course, in the Philippines, the beauty pageant is combination of money and looks. So we had to try to sell tickets, and the more tickets you get, of course, then your candidate may be up there. So, but it was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, she passed after having 4 kids. So she had 4 kids who were orphans that my parents took care of, and she passed away. The second one, my brother. Um, he he was 6 years older than me, and he was actually very smart. He was going to be an architect, but then he said he couldn't handle the math part of it. So instead of him being an architect, he became a business. He took up business, finished that, and then he decided to go into law school. So he became a lawyer, also taught subjects as a lawyer. But the one big thing that he is going to be remembered is that he created a festival in my city called the Flower Festival. And that was back in 1996, I think. And when we were growing up, okay, we had one of the American bases in my city, and it was considered a rest and recreation type of a place. So they had cottages there where people can stay for R&R. But as the city grew in size, for some reason, a lot of the flowers and a lot of the trees and mountains started disappearing, okay, which was a shame because when we were young, we really saw a lot of beautiful plants and beautiful, yeah, flowers growing up. Even my mom had a garden. She loved flowers and therefore she took care of them, and it was great. When my brother, actually, when the United States gave back the bases to the Philippines, they made my brother in charge of the one in my city, which was great because then he thought, we don't have a fiesta in my city to celebrate, but he remembered the flowers when he was young. So he decided to have a flower festival. Actually, part of it, the parade, the floats. He was thinking about the Rose Parade when he introduced that. The only thing, of course, is the floats are going to be small because my city is hilly and the roads are narrow. But anyway, that's the idea. It has grown so much that really right now it's like a 2-week festival with a lot of merchants from all over the United States coming to my city to sell their wares. uh, uh, a parade of the people in costumes for Saturday, and the float parade for Sunday, and millions of people actually come to my city to see that. So that is what is going to be remembered most, and I'm proud of him and all his accomplishments, and prouder still for doing that. However, because of the age difference, I didn't really have too much in common with them. It's kind of a shame, but that's what happens when you're 6 years apart, 12 years apart. I'm the youngest. Yeah, me and my siblings, we were already into different things. So as far as roles in the family are concerned, it's a bit fragmented. Okay, because my sister's already out of the house with her family, and my brother, who knows what he's doing, he's in high school with his fellow uh, his classmates, and whatever they do as guys. And I was by myself, and I was a loner by myself. My mother tried to get me to help in the garden, but I would just go to my room and say, "Sorry, I have to study for a test and I can't help in the garden." The same thing that would happen when she's cooking. I would just say, "Sorry, I have to," and they didn't mind it because I was getting good grades. If I weren't getting good grades, that would never have worked. But I was getting good grades, so they just, let me. I realized when I came to the United States later on how important those skills would be for me, but it is what it is. Yeah, as I said, really didn't have much of a relationship as siblings. We weren't doing things together, just different interests at the time. And I mean, we know each other, of course, but no, no. Yeah, they did their own thing and I did my own thing. As far as my family is concerned, I knew we were different because of the work that my parents did and their work ethics. We were, as I said, my mom would be teaching in three schools, and my dad would be away. Um, we are going visiting schools and starting schools in the mountain provinces. And my responsibility was to be a student, and that was it. No shenanigans either, because if I did anything wrong, the teacher that I have in school, they report to my parents right away. No ifs, ands, or buts. So I had to be a good student, not necessarily by choice, but I had to be a good student. Or let's put it this way: I didn't have much of a choice because if I weren't a good student, my parents would just, it's not acceptable. Yeah. So yeah, and I know that we were different because to us also education is very important. A lot of people would talk about money. We hardly ever talked about money really in my family because they were all salaried. It's not like we had side hustles to make money. And whatever money we had was comfortable enough for our lives living condition. So and in a way, our paths are set up. For me, my brother, my sister, we had to go to school, we had to finish our degrees, we had to go find a work, and that's it. That's the path we would take. Later on, of course, then we started doing other things, but much later on in our lives. As for my younger self and what I felt deeply as a child, I probably didn't think too deeply about anything. I didn't think too deeply about anything, frankly, because there was always school. There was always school. There were always things to study. There were always things to read. I remember my father had a set of Britannica books. Britannica books. You know, I mean, these days in Google, you just go Google and find out the information. There you had to go, page or whatever. But that's our Google at the time, the Britannica books. So everything was study for me. And whatever little free time I have, I would do, work or play with my dolls. The dreams that I had when I was young was, well, finish school, first of all, since that was a non negotiable item. Finish school. But because of the travels that my father did and the postcards that he would send me once in a while, I had a dream of traveling. And I'm fortunate in my life that I was able to, you know, to accomplish that. I don't think I have any specific person in mind. It is more what traits they have that I can hopefully imitate or, you know, follow that will help rule my life and make it better than what it is. I just know that I love reading the Nancy Drew stories. I put myself, go to the library, sit in a corner and read the books. So that then I moved on to spy stories or detective stories. Those are the kind of books that I love to read. Now, of course, it's more eclectic. That's for another time. A lot of those tests that I had to go through to get maybe to develop resilience in my character happened after I left the Philippines, and I had to travel all by myself. And especially my first year in the United States, I was pretty much alone. My parents were like million miles away. Um, I didn't have any safety net. I shouldn't say that. I could have had a safety net. I just didn't want to access it. Okay, like my parents would say, yeah, what do you need? But I didn't want to ask for anything. And I always had the fear of, I'm going to die in the street and nobody would even know about me. It also, I used to live in New York City, and it just opened my eyes really to different people, different types of people you can trust and people you can't trust. And so it's like every day you just evaluate the situation and learn from it if you can, and hopefully not get too hurt too badly. The friendships that I could remember, the meaningful relationships that I could remember would be when I was in high school. So I just had a bond with PI. We call her PI. She was born on July 4th, which is which is used to be Independence Day also that we celebrated, even if we knew it was the U.S., not the Philippines. She was the smartest person in the group. She was always ahead of everybody, but she was also very nice and very low key. So I was able to you know bond with her and build a relationship, and to this day I do keep in touch with them. And in fact, Gregory even visited them just this, past November. So I have very few friends, but very close friends. And the class that we were in high school, it's the Baguio City High School, class 62. For some reason, we had a very closely knit group. We used to do caroling together during Christmas, and we'd have like birthday parties in each other's homes. And to this day, when I visit the Philippines, we will always have a reunion, mini reunion. I mean, our numbers are dwindling down now because of our ages, but still, we celebrate reunions. It's my church life. It's my church life and looking at the life of Jesus Christ, um, and just following that path. Unfortunately, at the time, we had very good counselors and even American missionaries that helped us and our youth group. And I think because of that, it intensified the values that I have in life. Our our home is, as I said, it's drama free. And if we want to find a quiet corner, we can find a quiet corner. My sense of identity, I can't attribute too much, I think, to my childhood, to high school, even to college. I think I found myself when I came to the United States. I was traveling by myself and I'm living by myself. And that's when I started to know what I can and cannot do. I'm like a, what's that? A late bloomer. That's what you call it, a late bloomer. Don't be too serious, is what I would tell my younger self. I think I missed out on the fun of some, celebrations or even daily life, but being much too serious. Always, if there's a choice between studying and playing a game with someone, more often than not, I'd go study. Maybe during some of those times, I should be playing with someone and enjoying the game. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics from the University of the Philippines. Why mathematics? Actually, it was the only subject I was comfortable with from elementary to high school. In math, everything to me was black and white. I didn't have to make choices. For the other subjects, it's always gray. And so I just always go back to math. And I also liked the teacher teaching those math classes. So I decided that's what I'm going to do. Just do a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics. Now, what am I supposed to do with that? After graduation, I actually had two offers. One was to do econometrics in this private Catholic university that was being, and econometrics department was being set up by this one priest. He was very nice, he was very knowledgeable. And on the other hand, there is this position to teach mathematics in this very exclusive American school called Brent School. I wasn't ever going to consider teaching in the public school because of my parents. And so I didn't want them influencing my career or other people giving me special privileges just because of my parents. So I just decided on these two private school um, courses. In the end, I ended up going to Brent School and teaching mathematics there. I taught science also because they needed science teacher, but mostly it was math in both elementary and high school. It was very easy for me actually, and I loved it just because I could have maybe only about 10 students or 15 students in a class. And if I ever had a problem with a student, all I had to do was go to their parents and problem solved. So that's what I did for 2 years. College memories, there really weren't too much for me. Again, it's basically back to school. I studied, and studied. That's my 4 years of college. It's all about studies. I did join the math club briefly, but didn't make really any friendships, any consequence there. Um, and I also taught the equivalent of Sunday school in the elementary school next to the college. So that took care of about once a week classes. So those are the only things really that I remember most about college and graduating college. I couldn't wait to graduate because I couldn't stand the heat in Manila. My first job after college was the teaching position in Brent School. It was only 2 years, but for me, they were very um, meaningful years. Not only in making relationships with the other teachers, but also relationships with the students and just being more exposed to just a wider audience. I think most of the students there, their their parents worked with multinational companies. So the students stayed in half the students stayed on campus, and I was one of the teachers who stayed on campus with them. And then the others are usually students from pastors in the Episcopalian area. They were given a special scholarship to go to Brent School, which was Episcopalian. Normally, it's a very expensive school, but for them, they were given scholarships. It was actually a fun experience. Again, as I said, because I had very few students in each class, so I was able to enjoy them. Oftentimes, they're very sharp, so I would finish the curriculum even before the end of the year. So then that gave me a lot of extracurricular activities to do with them, maybe art-related math classes. Uh, for the students, we'd go to some field work with the older students. In fact, one day we brought home a boa constrictor and put them in a case in my room. And the third grade teacher was so upset; she was in hysterics. So, needless to say, the boa constrictor didn't stay too long in my room. One of the teachers was asking if I was working for my visa to come to the United States. And I said, no. It's not so much that I didn't have an interest, it just didn't occur to my mind to go get a visa for the United States. And he said something very important. He said, do you know that Steve in your class, his father is a consul at the embassy? And so I spoke to Steve and I said, oh, can I make an appointment with your dad? And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. So I went to the embassy, didn't have to fall in line with anything. I just went straight to the office and spoke to Steve's dad. And in 5 minutes, he gave me my visa. The rest of the hour and a half, we just chatted about his son. Well, his son is a C student. Unfortunately, I really couldn't give him better than a C, and that's it. But anyway, so that visa enabled me to come to the United States. Why apply for a visa for the United States? Actually, I wasn't thinking at all about coming to the US. I knew that eventually I'd want to, but not at the time. But the process was so easy when I got my visa. So I said, well, I might as well, continue with that. When I was trying to book my passage to the United States, I already had a family in the United States waiting for me. It's actually the my former pastor's family in the Philippines. So I already knew them and they were willing to take me in. So when I was debating about my passage to the United States, I had a choice. It was $500 ticket to fly. It was also a $500 ticket to take a ship. To me, that was no brainer. I was going to take the ship because for me, the plane would just drop me off and that's it. I wouldn't get to see anything. Whereas when I looked at the itinerary of the ship, it went to Hong Kong, it went to Yokohama, that enabled me to visit Kyoto. It went to Kobe, that enabled me to visit Tokyo. Uh, went to Hawaii, went to Los Angeles until it dropped me off in San Francisco. So already my desire to see the world was, getting there. It was already in my heart and in my mind. Now, come to think of it, when I got to California, I was staying with a family who were Filipinos. I was interacting with Filipinos. Banks were Filipinos. The church was a Filipino church. And of course, a lot of the workers were Filipinos because Salinas is the salad capital of the world, okay, or the United States at the very least. And because I was only interacting with Filipinos, I thought, well, this isn't the America I wanted to see. And so there was a special ticket on Greyhound, which was $99, that would take me from San Francisco to New York City. And I can stop wherever the bus stops. It's almost like a hop on, hop off bus through the United States. So I was able to visit my friends in Chicago, visit my pen pal in Missoula, Montana. Just got off the bus in Chicago to visit some museums. Got off the bus in Minneapolis. And I think that's it. And then proceeded to New York City, which is where my life of difficulty began. Because I had to look for a job. Otherwise, I won't be able to sustain myself. And as I said, I didn't really want to get, funds from my family. Not yet, anyway. So my girlfriend had a job in, it's called International Flavors. And it was International Flavors and Perfume Company. What it is they duplicated a lot of the flavors and a lot of the, perfumes uh, that you see in the marketplace. So I was put in the lab. We were trying to duplicate soda, and they gave me the assignment to actually try to figure out what's in Coke. Okay, because of course Coke was never gonna give their formula to anybody. Unfortunately, I'm not used to all those contraptions in chemistry. I think I took one chemistry subject, which I probably didn't take too seriously, but as long as I passed, I was okay. And in using one of the pipettes, I actually burnt my lips. And that's when I realized there's so much acid in those soda cans. Okay, not just Coke, but all the soda cans. So from then on, I mean, I drink Coke once in a while just because I like the taste of it, or with some foods, it's great. But for the most part, I won't take, I won't take Coke because of the acid in them. I I was 21 years old when I left the Philippines. And I stayed with my girlfriend, and she was really just renting a room in Jersey City, which is just right across New York City. But when I joined her and she helped me find a job, I said, you know what, let's go look for an apartment. And so we found an apartment not too far. Again, Jersey City is just one subway away from New York City. It was very convenient and it was very inexpensive. So we went on, so we signed a lease for the apartment. The next morning after, we slept there one night, I looked out the window and there was this little cemetery right outside my backyard. But too late to back out. That's it. I just had to get used to it. And then in 71, I moved to New York City in Manhattan, just to get, more of that New York City life. Even if Jersey City is not too far from New York City, it's really different. Even just the one subway away makes things different. So in New York City, I remember our apartment. It was actually quite nice, and we had it pretty reasonable because it was near the UN, and I shared it with two other girls. There were three of us, and it was quite spacious actually for the three of us. But in any case, um, it's on 40th Street, and oops, sorry, okay, oops, sorry about that.
You're talking about the spacious apartment.
Okay, we had a spacious apartment on 40th Street and Second Avenue, which is really a perfect place to be in New York City. You're just, 2 blocks from 42nd Street and not too far away from Times Square and just a block or so from the United Nations. So, so it was great. The only thing is that there's a fire station next to it. However, after 3 days in the apartment, you know what? You no longer hear the fire trucks coming and going. So that was fine. Yeah. The one saving grace for me when I was in New York City, and that provided me social context, was when I joined International Center. International Center in New York City is really just a bunch. It's a group. It's a nonprofit group, I believe, because they had an executive director, and it gave foreign nationals living in New York, whether they worked in the UN or whether they studied in the various schools in the city, or whether whatever work they have, but it provided them access to cultural events, and it provided them access to social activities. So, for example, on holidays, several families would actually invite us to join them for Thanksgiving or Easter. Not all of us at the same time, but maybe they'll invite one or two people. And, you've got other families getting the other students. But to me, the highlight of being with the International Center is really their access to tickets to the theater. I love the theater. I love Broadway. Even before I came to the United States, I was already listening to Broadway songs and watching, movies of Broadway musicals. They had tickets, free tickets. You can go to opening night or you can go, during the week, whenever. So I would go to the theater about 3, 4 times each weekend. Matinee and evening, and then Sunday matinee and Sunday evening. They even have access to operas, to the Philharmonic, or access to off village, you know, theater, off Broadway theater. So even like small, maybe 50-seat theaters, but you never know what to expect. So that was a highlight of my thing, and then we would put on like little skits and little dances, and it's a lot of fun. Okay, when I was in New York City, um, I worked in different jobs, but fortunately, I was able to land a job being an actuarial job at the Metropolitan Life, and they were willing to write me a letter for my visa. So that kind of worked out. And in Metropolitan Life, I was in a training position to take the actuarial exams. And with these actuarial exams, you get you get raises, and they also move you from one department to another to get a better feel for what work there is in insurance companies. So I was in that program, and I was transferred to this one department, which also happens to be the department that Sobi, my future husband, was in. So that's where we met each other. And people were teasing us, go on a date, go on a date, you're both single, whatever. So we did go on a date, but we didn't tell anybody. In fact, for 2 years, we didn't tell anybody. Uh, the two or three people who knew we were going out were basically other actuaries because of the study group that we would be in. And 2 weeks before we were getting married, we made the announcement to everyone. And of course, they said, you are getting married. We didn't even know you were dating. Because really, I mean, then, probably even now, if you're the woman and you broke off with a guy and you work in the same company, guess who is disadvantaged? It's the woman. So I was very firm in making sure that nobody really knew about our relationship until we got married. So that's how we met. We got married in 1977, June 24. I was so insistent in not having a big wedding. It was a very small wedding because I didn't want to spend money on a wedding. I said instead of spending money in the wedding, we should just spend it for a tour to Europe. Of course, we did that. you know. I don't know if that's really what Sophie, my husband, wanted to do, but in any case, that's what we ended up doing. We went like on a 3 week tour of Europe, and I was a happy camper. And so that's what we did. And after that, of course, we started thinking about the house, and we decided to have a house in New Jersey. And in New Jersey, that's where our two sons were born. So they were born in St. Peter's Medical Center in New Jersey. It wasn't love at first sight. People were just teasing us, and so we said, "Oh, okay, let's do it." My suspicion is by then he probably dated enough. And for me, I've also dated enough. So it just might be the right time to settle. And the more I look at him and talk to him, whatever, I saw that he was really a nice, kind man. Um, I had preconceived notions of an Egyptian guy being very macho and trying to, just push their way around, and he was the opposite. So he was very nice. So, however, after we came back, there was a period there where I was so unhappy, and I didn't know why I was unhappy. He didn't know why I was unhappy until talking to a good friend of mine. He didn't even say anything really. I was just talking by myself. I realized that what made me unhappy was the fact that I lost my independence, or I thought I lost my independence, but of course I didn't. I learned later that your white knight is really someone who allows you to be yourself. And I think he turned out to be that white knight. We went through our first year. First year of marriage is always the most difficult part because you're adjusting to each other. At the end of the first year, and after we were fighting with words, we just looked at each other and said, "Why are we fighting?" And so from then on, we never fought. Yeah, the kids never saw us fight. So second year on, we just, we no drama. As I said, no drama. The first year was a little drama, but after that, no drama. Which fortunately, we were able to carry through even until now. And I could see it in my kids too. They have this no drama situation. We went to this Indian restaurant, and I'm not really into spicy foods, right? But this waiter comes around and said, "Well, we have this, but I just want to warn you that the entree is going to be spicier than this." So we ate, and I managed to eat it. And he brought us something else and said, "You know what? The main entree is going to be spicier than this. So just see what you can do with this." And it was okay. I think he brought us enough hot, spicy food that by the time the main entree came, it was no longer spicy to my palate or his palate. So that's my one spicy food story. But he is a funny guy. He has a good sense of humor. Sobe. I was the serious one. I barely had any sense of humor. So now when I come out with something funny, my kids say, "Oh, that's funny." I said, "Really?" I guess I was just channeling my husband. But my two kids, they have very good sense of humor. So an engagement? We never had an engagement. In fact, and I don't think we can even say who actually proposed to who. We just decided one day, yeah, we'll get married, and that's it. That's it. Even our engagement was no drama. No drama even. Even the wedding was no drama. Well, his family was already in New Jersey, but I didn't have family. I had a distant cousin in Connecticut who I invited, and a couple of friends, but pretty much. And I didn't really want a big deal for a wedding, so that people will come fly from the United States to come here. So it wasn't a big deal wedding. Our honeymoon trip is just like any other, you know, trip tour. We toured, I don't know, 5, 6 countries. We went to Paris, Rome, Amsterdam, London. Uh, I don't know, the usual places. Belgium, and I think the Munich was in there or something. Yeah, yeah, and of course just Lucerne, and of course just driving around those beautiful countrysides. Yeah, I mean I was in hog heaven. I loved it. So we were just so busy going from one site to another. Yeah. There is one instance where we were in Antwerp looking at we were in this diamond center. They always take you to these places so you can go shopping. And I saw this beautiful, beautiful, um, beautiful ring, like flowers, um, with little diamonds. And I said, "Should I?" And he said, "Sure. You want it? Go get it." And then I said, "Should I?" He says, "Yeah, go get it." And then finally, I just decided not to get it. Right. So it was like at the time $500. Since then, there was a common joke between me and Sobi. He says, "You know what? I should have bought you that $500 ring because I think you spend much more on your hobbies than than that $500 ring would be." So anytime I buy something for my silk flower arrangements or my origami or whatever, he says, "You know what? It would have been cheaper to get the ring." We were a young family with a couple of kids. I think we were just following, you know, the usual road. The kids grow up, You want them to get good education. You continue work and continue saving. And that's it. As we were getting closer to retirement, I knew that my husband wanted to perhaps live by the ocean. You know, maybe a place in Oxnard or a place by San Diego. Um, Unfortunately, that never happened. What surprised me the most about being a parent, when I was when I was not a parent, and I would look at the kids around me, or the, nephews and whatever, and they're getting rambunctious. I'd say, why doesn't the parent discipline them? They should be disciplining these kids, right? When I became a parent, I realized it's not that easy. When the kids are running around, you can't just put a leash on them and tie them to a they'll be who they'll be, and finally just found ways to be at peace with a toddler. Yeah. I just became much more understanding. I became much more tolerant for parents, because most of the time parents try to do their best. They don't always succeed in certain areas, but they do their best. And it's not an easy job. Now, I have to confess, I had it a little easier than other people. For the first couple of years, I remember going through a maid service, or a living housekeeper service, right? Because of my kids, they were young. But that really didn't work out, and none of them work out. It's not that they weren't nice or they weren't good or I was treating them not well or vice versa. It's just that most of the time they're actually immigrant, or they don't have proper papers. And so before you know it, one Sunday they're no longer coming. And that happened several times. And then my sister-in-law, the oldest sister of my husband, and her husband agreed to stay with us. My kids were in elementary school. And because of that, I was able to manage um, my work. I had to commute to West LA, leaving my house at 5 a.m. and coming back about 4 p.m. But my kids were okay because my sister in law took care of them. So now when everybody says, "Oh, your kids are so nice," I said, "Well, you know what? Blame my sister in law, not me." I don't remember particularly any routines with my kids. I know that my husband was always in the golf course. And because he was in the golf course, I didn't wait for him to come home to do things. So I had my little I had my Thomas guidebook. Older folks remember Thomas Guide. That's the GPS today. And I just go through the Thomas Guide and see what places we can go visit on a Saturday morning. So that's what I did on my weekends. As far as traditions, we do have two annual traditions with my sons. We have the annual Christmas party where we have about 70 folks or so coming on Christmas Day, and we're all having fun, and that has been going on for like 35 years. So Christmas Day, they are here seeing their cousins, and now we're seeing grandkids and grand cousins and grandnieces. So it's a beautiful thing. And the other one is about a little bit smaller. On New Year's Eve, um, we gather as a family. My two sons and their spouses and the grandkids, and we will have a steak dinner. That's our New Year's Eve dinner. And maybe just wait for 9 o'clock when the ball drops. It's 12 o'clock in New York, it's 9 o'clock here, and that's it. We don't wait for 12 o'clock. So those are the those two, traditions that we have right now. When my kids were young, elementary school up to maybe early high school, I'd take them to church. My philosophy was that they may or may not continue church later on, but at least they will learn uh, my uh, form of religion, Christianity, and in the same token that they will learn about Christian values, the values most of the values you know I follow or I cherish. So because of that, they know that I value honesty. They know that I value integrity. They know that we cannot always take the easy way out. We know to be considerate of other people. You're not always the one, who has to win or who has to be whatever. They have to be generous. They have to be gracious. They have to be um, thankful. It's basically those values. And I'm seeing them actually. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing them with these values, and I'm seeing my grandkids have those values. These days, of course, it's my grandkids I take to church. Again, for the same reason that I want them to learn about Christian values, and then later on, it's up to them to make their choices. The hardest part of parenting, I think, is when the kids are teenagers or maybe older, where you start letting go. It's not easy to let go, and you start not knowing everything because they aren't gonna tell you everything, and you know, that's always difficult for a parent. You want to know everything. It's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. But I'm very proud of Gregory and Chris, my son, because they seem to be in jobs that are suited to them, and therefore I can see them enjoying it. Okay, um, my Gregory is having so much fun with his phone calls, um, and having so much fun really, uh, just trying to help other people and seeking help from other people. And he thrives on the type of work that he's doing. And so that to me is very uplifting and very satisfying. Okay. As for Christopher, he's very different from Greg, but I could also see him. And in fact, I probably saw him a little bit more at work lately than before because he and his wife were here with me for 6 days after I got back from the hospital. So they were doing their work while they were here. They were making their phone calls. And the same thing. Uh, their work their work isn't easy, but they seem to thrive at work. And so what more can you ask? Okay. They got into careers that work for them financially and that work for them emotionally and mentally and even socially, I guess. Especially Greg. In Gregory, I could see his generosity and uh, willingness to help others, uh, and in making what I think are the right choices in his work. Yeah. As for Christopher, um, I see Christopher in, well, he is mathematically inclined, so I see a little bit of that in him. Um, Except maybe way beyond way beyond me as far as being that organized and being that he's very super organized. So he probably learned a little bit from me, but the rest, from the world or whatever. Yeah. But they're both of them are very caring. And when push comes to shove, I think, they both can be relied on. Um, yeah. I don't know. I see Greg, and I admire what he does with his kids and how he disciplines his kids. I don't I haven't had the need to, what do you call it? Intercept or interject or insert myself in any of those because I feel he's doing the right thing. Yeah. Now, as far as the other son is concerned, they've got dogs. So no kids, just dogs. I don't know anything about dog watching and dog caring. my the best accomplishments are basically my two kids. Yeah. To see them the way they are, to see them grow, to see them function in this life, and to see them interact with others. They're my greatest accomplishments. Yeah. Not that I had much to do with it, right? I have this philosophy. It's one third, and one third. Okay. That one third is from the parents. One third is from the people around you, including your teachers, the village, whoever, and the one third is themselves. How they make the choices that are given to them. So, in other words, it means that I can't take credit for their accomplishments, really, nor can I take the blame. As I mentioned earlier, my parents taught me gratitude and generosity. And so that has spilled over to uh, my desire to help others. In the Philippines, basically to help others, it's to help my nieces and nephews go to school. And I do a little bit of that. Right now I have like 8 kids I'm sending to school. Um, then I do Compassion International, which means that every time I go to a third world country and there are kids in that country listed in Compassion International that need help, so I sponsor a child. Um, the last one I sponsored is one from Bolivia, so I sponsor 8 kids now. Yeah, and but here in the U.S., it's more structured. Okay, um, and so I have the one that I'm proud of, really, and that I'm glad that we are able to keep going since 2009 is Valley Housing Partners. We started it because we wanted to help families, homeless families. But now it has formed into, we're trying to avoid families to get into homelessness. So they're at risk of homelessness. So they're not quite there, but we want to help them avoid it. And usually, $600 a month for a year is oftentimes enough to bridge that gap. Okay. We work primarily with two agencies. One is the San Gabriel Valley Coalition for the Homeless, and the other one is Mount SAC, because they have the capacity to do case management counseling. In my nonprofit, which is Valley Housing Partners, we don't have any social workers. We don't have any employees. We only have the board members, and the board members help me raise funds. So that's basically what it is. However, we want to make sure that the funds go out properly. So once a month, we expect a monthly report from whoever recommended them to make sure that they're on track. Okay, they're not just getting the money. They are at least working on themselves and their family to be in a better place than yesterday. Yeah. So that's one. The other one is I belong to Seroptimus International of the Americas. They're like Kiwanis Club and Lions Club, but their focus is women and girls. So we give them scholarship grants. Okay. So I belong to a small club. So we're only able to give like two scholarship grants, but that's two scholarship grants that, somebody may not have if if we didn't exist. Yeah. The other one I support is international. What's that? International. I suck. Innovative space for Asian American Christianity. I used to be a board member, but then I had to back off. But I continue sending them money, and they are organization that help basically women pastors, because most of the time they don't get the right jobs, or they're not given the right opportunities. In a Christian setting, it's amazing, but that exists especially in Asian or in the immigrant churches. So anyway, hopefully my little contribution will help uplift them. Yeah, so those are the organizations that I support, and that makes me feel like I'm helping somebody and makes a difference in this world. Yeah. Mm.